on demand via our Bloomberg Radio Plus app, free for iPhone and Android devices.
Let's talk to Dan Doro about this splash of cold water that the IMF has thrown at investors. He's head of research at Pharos Trading in Stamford, Connecticut. Dan, good morning, and thanks for being with us. Has your research been telling you anything about the continuing, I guess, fragility of the global recovery, especially if you throw in more geopolitical uncertainty, as we're seeing now in the Ukraine, or some anxiousness over the Chinese growth?
Well, there's no doubt that market volatility tightens financial conditions, especially in the more vulnerable emerging markets. So the IMF is citing valid risks, and we'll have to see if that materializes. We have a political shock in Ukraine on top of unrest in Thailand, so there is risk, given that there's been a broad-based unwinding in emerging markets, and sentiment is very suspect. The question is, will that continue, and will that continue to tighten financial conditions? It's not a foregone conclusion, but it's a risk.
All right, IMF. We'll pause it right there. Hello, and welcome in from Sunnyvale, California. I'm Mark Vierra. This is my weekly video that I do, complimentary to my trading log, and it's just a basic technical analysis video. Look into some just basic trend lines, some chart patterns, a little candlestick analysis, some fib numbers, some moving averages, and volume. And that's what this is about, just a little technical analysis. So in these videos, I'm not making any buying or selling recommendations, just gonna try to give you my thoughts on the market and see where it's where I think she's heading. This week I have really some conflicts we'll get into here between the long-term chart patterns and near-term price action. So it's getting a first chart queued up here, taking a wide lens view look at where I have trend lines drawn on the S&P 500 index, and this just gives you an outwardly view. And here I'm zooming in a bit. Okay, let's take a look at, I have drawn in here the monthly candle. This is where we are currently, and we are just a week away from this candle completing itself. It was engulfing on the SPY last week. Now we've come back. We're pretty much flat for the week, so we pulled back just a skosh, and here I have this flag drawn in here. This is a high and tight flag. You could almost kind of get some your traditional flag lines drawn in there. In any case, is giving you an idea that we have a long-term bullish chart pattern. All right, that's all we want to really kind of read into this for right now. Last video, I was pointing out how we just market loves to run stops, and that's where we get these tails from, these upper and lower shadows. We'll get a little more into that. So let's just looking at the long term. This is really pointing out a good strong support here when you see these tweezer patterns. That's a you have a bearish candle here, and then it's bought back up in the next month, and just kind of a piercing type tweezer pattern. What else do I have? Symmetrical triangle. So you have to just disregard that there's no symmetrical triangle. I think I don't know how I mistakenly wrote that in there. I think I was looking at the US dollar long-term chart. In any case, that's a mistake. Let's move on. Monthly chart is looking pretty bullish to me, and now we're going to queue up some weekly charts. Okay, once again, now I want to just take a wide lens view. For the longest time I've had this kind of a loose pivot drawn off the highs, just cutting right through price. Sometimes these give you good pivots. And in this case, I'm now focusing on from the low to the high and getting a different kind of oscillation effect. So let's zoom in on that. All right, so what I've got is this new kind of pivot drawn here that's coming up as a resistance. So these loose pivots, as I call them, are just freehand drawn, and I don't want to read too much into that. I've got just an upward channel on the weekly. We're still within this range. I even threw in another little, from the median highs here to the median lows, because I wanted to capture this tweezer, this previous tweezer, marking out a strong support bottom. And I mentioned in last video too, with candle blending, you can blend these two candles and blend these two candles and get another tweezer. I like looking at tweezers because they're pretty good at marking down a base level. Other than that, there's just an upward trend on the trend lines on this chart. Let's go to another. Okay, I've queued up this weekly chart where I have this right-angled broadening and descending pattern. This is where we're getting really strong resistance here, and then we have a broadening type of pattern. I wrote in here too, just trying to calculate the strength of this, is we have 6 touches on resistance and 4 touches on the support of this line. And here's our indecision doji for the week, and on the SPY it's more of an inside candle, but this inside doji is bearish haramai. I'm terrible with pronunciations, I apologize for that. Now that's usually a bullish continuation the majority of the time. It's a bearish the chart patterns dictate that it is a bearish, but and I refer back to this excellent database on the performance of chart patterns, which I might as well just go in and show you that right now. If you go into my trading log down at the bottom, I source out this guy Blowski here at the pattern site has just an extensive database of tracking these patterns. In any case, it is a bearish candle formation, but it's really almost near random, and the majority of the time it's a bullish continuation. So that's just food for thought there. Not all patterns really work out when you start tracking them. So let's see, what else on the weekly? Not much else on the weekly. So getting back to touches, some might say the more touches, the stronger the resistance. Some would say the more likely that it's going to be breached. What I do see is we have a flat week and prices closing up at the upper end of this weekly. Well, not the upper end of the channel. Of course, the upper end of the channel would be here. But upper end of where price is just having a tough time. Get into the daily charts. I don't think price is quite ready to get past this resistance, but we'll get further into that here. Let's close this up. Going to Fibonacci numbers. This is a weekly Fibonacci extension, and here's our doji is still right in between our 50% is where I always point out to be of interest, and we're holding support pretty well at the 38%. So that's the weekly fib extension. So where does this map out with a retracement? If I go from the low to our high, we're first fib number's 23%, and that's where we're getting support from. Our 50% would be way down below the 1800 level. That I'm pretty sure that would be some major support in there. What else? Where am I going here? So I came up with this weekly chart because I thought it was just amazing, this bullish market we're having. Usually you find a head and shoulder is a topping pattern. You find those usually at the top of the charts. Inverted head and shoulders you usually find at the bottom of the charts. And I'm just looking at all these on the weekly, all these these head and shoulders. Now this week we have a potential to put in another right shoulder here. Previous shoulder was down here. I doubt that we're going to get a shoulder that deep, but just it's amazing finding inverted head and shoulders at the top of the markets. Some other chart patterns I have, weekly measured move, round top, we're still looking for, this key psychological 1850 level has to be broken to get any of these chart patterns in play, and that's including the inverted head and shoulders. On the daily, I have it even. Usually I'll wait till a pattern breaks out before I put measurements to it, but I went ahead and I just put measurements in there because, especially for stuff like this, where the market wants to run these stops, I call these like fake outs, these false little breakdowns where it just pulls right back up into the pattern. And I think that's just the operators of the market just trying to fake you out before they take, things in an opposite direction. So same thing with a flag here. This, here's our confirmation line, and we won't call these patterns really patterns until they breach that confirmation line. But again, I put the numbers in here because this actually went to go down to the downside targets for that pattern. So I have no reason to not believe that it should attack the upward chart patterns for that. Now we're going to get into some. So let's take a look at a wide lens view of the daily trend channel. This is where I have the trend lines in here. Now last week I drew a trend line here and called that a range, and now this week, let's see where we're at with that. I moved it over, looking at the highs here, drawing a trend line, just basic trend line, and here would be a pivotal support, and I think this is where we're going to find our range for the week. Looking at this low here again for that inverted head and shoulder, that would be, I think, just a textbook right shoulder in there, and any break above this line, I will call that head and shoulder in play. Get more into chart patterns, but this is our daily trend channel that we're working along here. See, what else do I have on daily trend lines? Just like I was talking about, these loose pivots, you don't want to read too much into them, but now this is something that I haven't changed these lines that I've drawn, and it's amazing how price is respecting these loose pivots that I've drawn. So that's just real quick there, the regression. Here's a good one, Andrew's pitchfork. I always have this in my trading log every week, and I'm marking out here this 1815 where I think we're going to see price respecting ultimately this trend line. Now, I don't know if this week, I kind of think we're going to see some prices work their way down to support. At least I'm leaning that way, partly because of these topping tails here, just telling me that I just don't think price is ready. I think we need to see some support before price is going to want to springboard, past that resistance. We can look at our near-term moving averages. Not much going on there. Just seeing a little bit of curling on the 5-day moving average. Long term, I was expecting to get up to touch the upper part of the Bollinger Band. I thought we'd see some contraction by now, but our Bollinger Bands are still pretty wide. I think we're going to see some contraction, and that's another reason why I think we're probably going to see lower prices initially in the week, I think. Here's an interesting chart. Now this is, I'm queuing up here the weekly flag on a daily chart. And just to give you an idea, because the next chart I'm going to look at, we're going to get into daily chart patterns, and we're going to be looking at this area here, and you'll see why I'm just want to show you the weekly bull flag as opposed to, and it's a high and tight flag, and lo and behold here on this right shoulder we've got a very similar high and tight fashion bull flag that's being drawn in here. I think this is a fine area to put in this right shoulder. This would be, again, just a textbook inverted head and shoulder. and I think that would really bring together this thesis of mine, where we need to see some launch, some springboard off of lower support, put in that flag before I think this 1845 I think would be, because we have a slanted type neckline. You could draw it horizontal at 1850. Either way, it would be pretty close. What else do I have in here? We had Tuesday a deliberation candle. That's a three candle pattern here. Very similar to a type of deliberation. The other one would be the advanced block, but this is more of a deliberation. Then followed by this up thrusting here, which is pretty bearish. We had a bearish candle. Then it was bought back up, putting in another kind of a tweezer piercing pattern. So the bottom of this flag, I think, is pretty solid support here at 1828. But I do think that we will fill in more of this area here. Well, we'll see, but that's my guess. This last Friday, we had this up thrusting here too. So these up thrust candles, these topping tails, are usually correct, and then you'll see some consolidation. Last week, this is what I was saying, is we should see some consolidation. That would be good for the upward trend to see that consolidation, because then once these supports are tested, they act as a springboard. So that's what I'm looking for. Other chart patterns here. Well, let's see. No, I think that's it. We got the bull flag, right shoulder developing. So where else am I going here? So I was thinking we could look at the flag measurements, but really until we see these confirmation levels breached, it's I'm just throwing measurements in there mostly just because I want to see what the numbers are, but oftentimes I'll just wait until the patterns hit confirmation to draw measurements. Now here is our volume chart for the daily. This is the SPY ETF, tracks the S&P 500, and I've got all kinds of stuff going on in here. So let's see, where are we going to start here? Well, let's define some terms. High volume node is volume by price, and this is, you want to think high volume nodes and point of controls, you want to think mean reversion. Okay, you could say most of the shares changing hands. This could be points of agreement or disagreement. I think you want to think of high volume nodes also as pivotal, where support can be broken and then it's a resistance. I also look at low volume areas too as being supportive, because it's a lack of activity going on. So you have just where there's just no supply or demand really at these areas, and that's oftentimes supportive. Trend lines that I've drawn in here on the SPY are coinciding with these high volume areas too. This right here, I'm calling this would be from left shoulder to left shoulder, is what's known as a throwback. Okay. Below that, you would say the pattern could be busted. What else do I have? I've got so much going on in here. We have lower oscillator with higher highs, so that's a hidden bearish divergence. That's another reason why I think these topping tails are saying that we want to test supports. We're right at this, still above this key pivot, so it's really tough to say. It could go either way. We could come right out of the gate and break this. I'm leaning towards no. I think we want to see some downward action. I really would like to see some support before we get higher prices. I think that would have a springboard type of effect. Now, increase of daily volume on the move lower. That is supporting a bearish type volume. Get into that on the hourly chart. I have that drawn in. But we're just still kind of below average volume, which is indicative of, we had the previous buying climax up here on lower volume. Now when we have selling climaxes down here, we're seeing much higher volume on our selling climaxes. So that's sort of telling me about what institutions are about here, is they're spending more money buying, all right, than higher activity at the selling. So I think that is kind of an important thing to note. So let's close this up, take a look at an hourly chart. That's where I see some intraday volume. Let's open that up here. So this whole run up right here, all right, was done on increasing volume, all right, and that's bullish volume. When volume is increasing on its move, you want to look at that as confirming that direction. Now here we're coming down and we're increasing now on the move lower. That's bearish volume, and it's also confirmed too because here we are going up and we're declining volume. So right now I'm seeing bearish volume. Also have this lower oscillation, with higher prices. That's also confirming the hidden bearish divergence. So volume is kind of telling me that we're turning slightly bearish, not too much, especially when you look at the indecision doji on the weekly the weekly candle is not really saying that we're overly too bearish, but this is how I'm leaning. That's what I'm reading out of it. I'm not getting too much. Let's take a look at some composites, but there's really nothing jumping out at me. Said we'd make kind of a P-shaped composite, and that's kind of what's going on here. The one thing that I do consider important here is our weekly composite. And what I like about the weekly composite is it's building nice, excellent bell curve structure. All right, that's telling me that price is comfortable at these levels. Really, it's that's all. Our TPO. Here's your initial balance. This is how we opened out the gate for the week. We have the TPO, time price opportunity, and our point of control all contained within that, which is within this bell curve. This is just really, I think, good structure. Okay, if we're going to see some lower prices, I would look at this previous week's TPO. That would be, I think, strong support in there. That's what I'm getting from volume. Not much else going in there. Take a look at some U.S. Treasuries next. So I'm going to log this week. I usually just do a daily chart of the U.S. Treasuries. Here I've got, this is monthly. We have a bearish Haramai. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Which is really bullish continuation the majority of the time. On the weekly U.S. Treasuries, this is looking a little more bullish. We have some indication of strength. We did a supply test here, and we're not breaking down lower, so we're almost pretty much confirming no supply on the weekly. Now, on the daily is looking sort of bearish to me, just because I see this head and shoulders in the background. Price is popping up above the neckline. As far as volume is pretty neutral. There's really nothing to see with our oscillator. Just that head and shoulders is looking bearish to me. Now, yield, we haven't moved too much on the yield, and that's of no surprise since we really didn't move anywhere on the indexes, slightly lower to flat. Just each week I like to look at the yield and see, is it up here at its higher yield, which would be bad for stocks, or is it down here lower yield, I think makes stocks look more attractive. US dollar, this is where that symmetrical triangle came in. I don't know why I wrote it on the S&P 500 chart, but symmetrical triangle tends to be bullish. And right now you have this stick sandwich, which is a bullish reversal, is really more of a bearish continuation the majority of the time, with also engulfing its previous candle. So, I'd say the symmetrical triangle could break out to the downside and do one of those, like I say, these fake outs. I think, the market just loves to shake out speculation, and that's how it does. It will try to fake you out. Weekly US dollar is a bullish hammer eye testing supply, and zooming in now on the daily, the US dollar is just doing this bear flagging. Okay, this is looking really bearish to me here on the dollar. But then I'm looking at this little hidden divergence on our oscillator. We had an engulfing candle on the Wednesday. Okay, that's giving credence to the bullish divergence and building this flag. Now, I think it's more than likely that we're going to break down lower out of that flag. And same kind of symmetrical triangle on the euro for the monthly. Okay, weekly, this is sort of an advanced block deliberation, which is a fairly decent bullish continuation. Not one of my most favorite candlestick charts, but I'm getting closer to my target here, $1.38. This is where I want to. I have an alert set. This is my wake-up call here. $1.38 is my line in the sand. Here is on the daily the mirror image of the U.S. dollar. We're looking at these bull flags. H&R block. Declining volume at upper price is sort of like the resistance on the S&P 500. I'm not sure price is quite ready to get up there, but then volume is pretty neutral. So volume will ultimately tell the tale there. That's what I'm looking at for the U.S. Treasuries, U.S. dollar, and the euro. And where am I going to go from here? I think I'm going to call this a video, where you can find me. This is me, Vario, here, HotStockMarket.com. This is where you can find in my trading log. I'll have all of these images up soon. This is my previous week's trading log. So you'll be able to see those images. And last of all, I want to just point out, get some interesting discussion going on here at Reddit, subreddit StockMarket. This is a good place to find information. And that's it.